I stared at my phone. Then I stared again. Then I made a sound that wasn't quite human, something between a dying whale and a smoke alarm, and my roommate started pounding on the wall so hard I thought she was going to come through it. Elena? Elena? You okay in there? I wasn't okay. I was the opposite of okay. I was approximately 17 light years away from okay. My soul had packed its bags, kissed my body goodbye, and was currently booking a one-way flight to a dimension where embarrassment didn't exist. Because somehow, I had just sent a very, very private photo to my professor. Not just any professor. Professor Diana Ashford. The woman who taught modern American literature with a voice so smooth it could narrate paint drying and make it sound erotic. The woman whose office hours were so popular students literally camped outside her door like she was selling concert tickets. The woman who had won 3 teaching awards, published 2 critically acclaimed books, and once made a visiting dean cry just by raising one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. The woman I may or may not have had a catastrophic, soul-crushing, utterly hopeless crush on for the past 8 months. And now she had received a picture that was never, ever meant for her eyes. My phone vibrated. Diana Ashford calling. I nearly launched the device across the room like a grenade. Nope. Decline. Not today. Not ever. I was going to delete this app, delete my contacts, delete my entire existence and move to a remote village in Iceland where no one had ever heard of email. 3 seconds later. Diana Ashford calling. Decline. Again. 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 By the 6th call, I was hiding under my blanket like a child terrified of monsters, except the monster was my own stupidity and the blanket was made of cotton and false hope. I was 22 years old, a graduate student in English literature, and possibly the dumbest person in the entire university. How had this happened? Simple. My best friend Riley. Everything bad in my life always started with Riley. 45 minutes earlier, she had barged into my apartment with a bottle of cheap wine and an agenda. You've been moping for 8 months, she announced, kicking off her shoes. 8 months, Elena. That's longer than some marriages. You need to do something about this crush. There's nothing to do, I muttered, burying my face in a pillow. She's my professor. She's brilliant and beautiful and way out of my league. Also, she's literally paid to evaluate my work. It would be inappropriate. Okay, first of all, she's like 35, not 100. Second, you're a grad student, she's a professor, that's basically the same age bracket in academia. Third. She pulled out her phone. What are you doing? Research. She scrolled dramatically. According to this article, confidence is attractive. You need to feel good about yourself. You need to feel powerful. I feel like a potato. Exactly the problem. Riley grabbed my arm and dragged me toward my bedroom mirror. Look at yourself. You're gorgeous. You're smart. You're the only person in that seminar who actually reads the assigned books instead of just Googling summaries. You made Professor Ashford laugh last week. She never laughs. She did a polite exhale through her nose. That's basically a standing ovation from her. I stared at my reflection. Brown hair that never did what I wanted. Green eyes that looked okay in certain lighting. A face that was fine, I guess, but not exactly the kind of face that made brilliant literary scholars forget their professional boundaries. Riley was already pulling up her camera. I'm going to take a picture of you. A good one. A confidence-boosting picture. And you're going to look at it and realize you're actually attractive. This is stupid. This is empowerment. She made me pose. Made me push my hair back. Made me angle my chin in a way that apparently highlighted my jawline. Made me unbutton the top 2 buttons of my shirt, for mystery, she insisted, and then she snapped about 40 photos while I alternated between laughing and dying inside. Perfect, she announced. Send this to yourself so you can remember how hot you are when you're feeling sad. So I grabbed my phone. Opened my chat. Selected the best photo, the one where I actually looked kind of good. Confident. Almost like someone a person might want to know. And I hit send. Except. My thumb had slipped. Or the universe hated me. Or my brain had temporarily vacated my skull and left only chaos behind. Because I hadn't sent it to Riley. I had sent it to Diana Ashford. The photo had been marked with a little blue check mark for exactly 3 seconds before my phone rang. The 6th call finally went to voicemail. Then a text arrived. Diana, Elena. Call me. Now. I gasped. That was it. My academic career was over. My thesis advisor would get an email about my unprofessional conduct. My graduate degree would be revoked. I'd end up working at a coffee shop, hiding from my former classmates, forever known as that girl who sent inappropriate photos to Professor Ashford. I was 22 years old, unemployed adjacent, and possibly the most humiliated person on the planet. My phone buzzed again. Diana, I'm serious, Elena. Answer the phone. I considered faking my own death. Maybe a dramatic disappearance. I could go live in the woods. Become a hermit. Write a memoir about my tragic downfall and publish it under a pseudonym. Another message appeared. Diana, you're not in trouble. I blinked. Wait. What? Not in trouble? That couldn't be right. I had just sent my professor a photo that was, let's be honest, not exactly appropriate for academic correspondence. She was supposed to be angry. Horrified. Filing a complaint with the department chair. Having me banned from campus. Not this. I cautiously typed back, really? 3 dots appeared instantly. Diana, no, actually. You are in trouble. I nearly fainted. Diana, but not for the reason you're thinking. What did that even mean? My anxiety doubled. Tripled. Achieved previously undiscovered levels of panic. I started pacing my room, which was approximately 4 steps across, which meant I was basically spinning in circles like a confused dog. Diana, meet me in my office tomorrow. 9 a.m. That was it. No explanation. No context. Nothing except a time and a place and the absolute certainty that I was going to die of embarrassment before I even got there. I slept approximately 0 minutes that night. Okay, maybe 12. 13. The kind of sleep where you're technically unconscious but your brain is still running marathons through every possible worst-case scenario. Maybe HR would be there. Maybe the department chair. Maybe a formal disciplinary committee with a PowerPoint presentation titled, Why Sending Your Professor Photos of Yourself in a Suggestive Pose is a Violation of University Policy. I arrived at the English department building at 8:47 a.m. looking like I'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. My hair was doing something tragic. My eyes had dark circles that could have been mistaken for bruises. My shirt was wrinkled because I'd changed approximately 6 times and finally gave up. Everyone else in the hallway seemed normal. Chatting about assignments. Drinking coffee. Living their lives like they hadn't just committed the most embarrassing mistake in academic history. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my own execution. The hallway to Professor Ashford's office felt longer than the entire Oregon Trail. Each step was heavier than the last. By the time I reached her door, my legs were trembling so badly I had to lean against the wall. Knock. Come in. That voice. Smooth. Controlled. Deep enough to make my stomach flip even when I was actively dying of mortification. I pushed the door open. Professor Diana Ashford sat behind her desk, a gorgeous mahogany thing covered in stacks of books and student essays. She was wearing a cream-colored blouse, dark trousers, and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her dark hair was swept back from her face in that effortless way that made her look like she'd just stepped out of a literary magazine. Those sharp gray eyes lifted toward me. For one terrifying second, neither of us spoke. Then she slowly picked up her phone. My phone. The photo. Everything. My soul left my body for the second time. She placed the phone down carefully, folded her hands on the desk, and said, "I have a question." I swallowed so hard I nearly choked. Okay. Diana leaned forward. The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost not. "Why?" she asked calmly, "did you send that to me?" And suddenly, I wasn't sure which answer would get me in more trouble. My mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No words came out. I probably looked like a goldfish having a panic attack. Professor Ashford's Diana sat calmly behind her desk, waiting. Meanwhile, my brain was running laps around a burning building. I didn't mean to, I finally managed. Great. Wonderful. Brilliant answer. 10 out of 10. She raised one eyebrow. That's your explanation? Yes? No? I don't know. That's pretty much all I've got. For a moment, silence filled the office. Then something happened that nobody in the English department had ever witnessed before, something that would have made headlines in the student newspaper. Diana Ashford laughed. Actually laughed. A real, genuine, full sound that transformed her entire face. Those gray eyes crinkled at the corners. Her shoulders relaxed. She leaned back in her chair and laughed like I'd just told her the funniest joke in the world. I froze. The woman was famous for never smiling. Students literally had a betting pool about whether she'd ever shown emotion in public. And now she was laughing. At me. Oh God, I groaned, covering my face with both hands. This is the most embarrassing day of my entire life. I disagree. I looked up. What? Diana leaned forward again, resting her chin on her hand. The most embarrassing day of your life, she said, is probably still ahead of you. My eyes widened. Please don't say things like that. That almost smile appeared again. Becoming alarmingly frequent. And honestly? That was making things worse. Much worse. Because the more she smiled, the prettier she became. Not that I'd noticed before. Okay, I'd noticed. A lot. An unhealthy amount. I'd written entire poems about her hands. Her voice. The way she tilted her head when she was reading something particularly good. But now I was trapped in her office, staring directly at the woman responsible for approximately 80% of my romantic problems. And she knew it. Relax, she said. Relax? I accidentally sent private photos to my professor. My academic future is hanging by a thread. I'm about as relaxed as a squirrel inside a tornado. Diana folded her hands. You aren't in trouble. Academically. I blinked. What? You heard me. The tension immediately left my body. I nearly collapsed into the chair in front of her desk. Oh, thank God. You should still be more careful. Trust me. I've learned my lesson. I'm never taking another photo again. That's not what I meant. Deleting my phone? Also not what I meant. I sighed. Diana sighed. We stared at each other. Then somehow, impossibly, we both started laughing. The weirdness of the situation finally hit us, the absurdity of it all. An accidental photo. A panicked spiral. A meeting that was supposed to be a disciplinary hearing and had somehow turned into this. And for the first time since I'd started working with her, since I'd started really noticing her, Diana Ashford looked human. Not a professor. Not an award-winning academic. Not an intimidating intellectual legend. Just a woman. A ridiculously beautiful woman. But still a woman. The realization made my stomach flutter. Dangerous. Very dangerous. There's another reason I called you here, she said. My heart stopped. Of course there was. Here comes the bad part. The formal warning. The revoked privileges. We think it's best if you transfer to another program. Diana opened a folder. I'm assigning you to co-chair the campus literary festival next month. I blinked. What? You heard me. I stared. Then stared harder. Then looked behind me to make sure there wasn't another student hiding in the room. Why me? Diana looked genuinely confused. Because you're the best student in the program. I almost laughed. There's no way. There's every way. The compliment hit harder than expected. My cheeks warmed instantly. I could feel the heat spreading across my face like someone had turned on a furnace inside my skin. Diana noticed. Of course she noticed. The woman noticed everything. You're blushing. No, I'm not. You absolutely are. I'm warm. The heating in this building is aggressive. You're a terrible liar. I groaned. She smirked. Actually smirked. How was this real life? The next week became surprisingly busy. The literary festival was approaching fast, which meant I spent almost every day working directly with Diana. In her office. Alone. Just the two of us, surrounded by stacks of books and papers and the faint scent of her perfume, something floral and warm that made my brain go fuzzy. Every single day. Not great for my mental health. The problem wasn't that Diana was mean. Actually, the problem was the opposite. The more time I spent around her, the more impossible it became to dislike her. She remembered every student's name. She treated the undergrads with respect. She made coffee for her TAs in the morning and always asked about their lives, their families, their research. She secretly donated money to the English department's emergency fund for students who couldn't afford textbooks. And worst of all? She was funny. Nobody knew that. The entire university thought she was made of ice and scholarly detachment. Meanwhile, I discovered that she had sarcasm sharp enough to qualify as a weapon, dry wit that caught me off guard and made me laugh so hard I couldn't breathe. Which made her even more attractive. Not fair. Completely unfair. 3 days before the festival, we were reviewing event plans in her office. I was explaining the schedule for the poetry reading. Diana was listening, or at least pretending to listen, because every few minutes I'd catch her staring at me with this unreadable expression. Then she'd look away. Weird. Very weird. Professor Ashford? She blinked. Diana. Sorry? When we're working like this, she said, her voice carefully neutral, just Diana. We've been over this. Right. She'd told me that 3 times already. Every time I called her professor, she'd correct me with that same quiet insistence. But something about using her first name felt intimate. Dangerous. Like crossing a line I wasn't supposed to cross. Okay, I said. Diana. The name felt strange in my mouth. Warm. Like I was tasting something I wasn't supposed to have. She smiled, a small, private thing. Then she said, keep going. You were telling me about the guest poets. I looked down at my notes. Right. So the keynote speaker? You haven't written anything down. Diana gestured at my blank page. You've been staring at the same paragraph for 10 minutes. You haven't written a single note. I'd been distracted. Obviously. By her. By the way her glasses kept slipping down her nose. By the way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking. By the way her voice made my entire nervous system short-circuit. I memorized it, I lied. All of it? Yes. Show off. I narrowed my eyes. She narrowed hers back. For some reason, that made both of us smile. And suddenly, the room felt much smaller. Dangerously smaller. I started. Elena, she started at the same time. We both stopped. Stared at each other. A charged silence settled between us, heavy and electric and full of things neither of us was saying. Then her office door opened. A woman walked in, tall, blonde, expensively dressed, carrying a designer bag that probably cost more than my rent for a year. She looked at me, then at Diana, then back at me. Her smile disappeared. Am I interrupting something? Diana's expression shifted. Cold. Professional. The famous ice queen was back. This is Elena, she said smoothly. My graduate assistant for the literary festival. The woman's eyes flicked over me with the casual assessment of someone who was very used to being the most important person in the room. I'm Catherine Vance, she said, extending a hand. Diana's oldest friend. Something about the way she said oldest friend felt intentional. Like a warning. Or a claim. I shook her hand. Catherine's grip was firm. Competitive. Like she was secretly testing me. And I suddenly felt very, very out of place. Which was ridiculous, because Diana wasn't mine. Not even close. And yet, for some reason, I didn't like Catherine. Not one bit. Diana closed her folder. We're almost finished here. Catherine smiled. I smiled. Neither smile was genuine. Of course, Catherine said. I'll wait in your office. Take your time. She paused at the door, looking back at me with something that might have been curiosity or might have been hostility. Then she was gone. The silence she left behind was awkward. Okay, I said, standing up. I should. Elena. I stopped. Turned. Diana was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Her gray eyes were soft, almost hesitant, a look I'd never seen on her before. About the festival, she said. I just want you to know, you're doing excellent work. I appreciate it. Oh. I blinked. Thank you. I appreciate you trusting me with it. Of course. Pause. Longer than necessary. And Elena? Yeah? Don't send any more photos to anyone by accident. I groaned. I am never going to live that down, am I? Absolutely not. But she was smiling again. That small, private smile that made my heart do things it shouldn't. I nearly walked into the door trying to escape. 15 minutes later, my best friend Riley burst into the graduate student lounge and slammed both hands onto the table. Tell me everything. Riley, lower your voice. You accidentally sent photos to your hot professor and you didn't call me immediately? I had to hear about it from someone else? Someone who heard it from a TA who heard it from another student? There's a rumor mill happening and I'm not part of it? Lower your voice. She lowered it exactly 0%. And she called you into her office. And she didn't fire you. And now you're blushing. I buried my face in my hands. This woman was the reason my stress levels required medical supervision. So, Riley said, sitting down beside me. Spill. There's nothing to spill. The way you're turning red says otherwise. I sighed. She's actually nice, okay? She's not cold. She's not mean. She's smart and funny and she laughs at my jokes and she said I'm the best student in the program. Riley's eyes went wide. Elena. Elena. You have a crush on her. My silence answered for her. Oh my God, she screamed, actually screamed, across the entire lounge. And unfortunately, at that exact moment, the door opened. Diana Ashford stepped inside. Our eyes met. And judging by the amused expression on her face, she had heard absolutely everything. Oh no. No, 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 no. This could not be happening. Not today. Not ever. Not in this lifetime. My best friend Riley had just screamed you have a crush on her in the middle of the graduate student lounge. And standing 10 feet away was my professor. Diana. The woman who had somehow become the main character in every single one of my thoughts. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. Unfortunately, the floor refused to cooperate. Diana simply looked at me. Then at Riley. Then back at me. One eyebrow lifted. That was it. Just one eyebrow. And yet somehow, it felt more dangerous than a loaded weapon. Riley immediately pretended to be fascinated by a poster on the wall. Traitor. Absolute traitor. Diana's lips twitched. Then she calmly walked past us, heading for the coffee machine, as if nothing had happened. As if my entire soul hadn't just left my body for the third time in a week. When she was out of earshot, I slowly turned to Riley. Run, I whispered. What? Run before I murder you. She burst into laughter. I regret nothing. I regret meeting you. You definitely have a crush on her. I buried my face in my hands. Life was cruel. The next week, the literary festival arrived. It was the biggest event the English department had hosted in years, poetry readings, panel discussions, book signings, workshops. Hundreds of attendees from all over the state. Well-known authors. Local celebrities. The whole production was a nightmare of logistics and scheduling and crisis management. But somehow, we pulled it off. The morning of the festival, I was in the main hall, checking final details, when a familiar voice came from behind me. You clean up nicely. I turned, and promptly forgot how to breathe. Diana Ashford was standing 3 feet away, wearing a dark navy blazer that matched her eyes, a silk blouse that caught the light, and heels that made her already impressive height even more intimidating. Her dark hair was loose, falling past her shoulders in soft waves. Her glasses were gone through contacts, apparently, and the effect was devastating. "Professor," I started. "Diana." "Right. Diana. You look," I swallowed. "I mean, the festival looks good. I mean, everything looks, you look smooth. Very smooth." Diana's smile appeared, small, soft, dangerously beautiful. "Thank you. You look nice too." "Nice?" I groaned. "That's my response? Nice? I don't think I will." "Wonderful. Now you're teasing me." "Always." And that was the problem, wasn't it? She was always teasing me. Always giving me that look, the one that suggested she knew exactly what she was doing to me. The one that made me feel like I was the only person in the room even when there were 100 other people there. It was maddening. It was also the best feeling in the world. The festival went smoothly for the first few hours. Then trouble arrived. As trouble always does. And her name was Catherine Vance. I spotted her near the refreshment table, laughing at something Diana had said, touching Diana's arm, standing way too close. An uncomfortable feeling settled in my stomach. Jealousy. Ugly and unwelcome and impossible to ignore. Riley appeared beside me like an evil spirit. "There she is." "Who?" "Your rival." "I don't have a rival." Riley snorted. "Sure. I'm serious." "You're jealous." "I'm not." "You absolutely are." "I was. I absolutely was. And I hated it. Hated the way Catherine looked at Diana. Hated the way Diana laughed at whatever she was saying. Hated the way they seemed comfortable with each other in a way I could never be. Because Catherine had known Diana for years. They had history. They had shared jokes and inside references and probably 1,000 memories I would never be part of. And I was just her student. Her graduate assistant. The girl who'd accidentally sent her an embarrassing photo. Nothing more. Later that night, I escaped onto the balcony overlooking the university gardens. The cool air helped a little, cleared my head, slowed my racing heart. At least until the door opened behind me. Diana stepped outside. Of course she did. Because apparently my stress wasn't high enough. She approached the railing beside me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city lights glittered in the distance. The music drifted softly from inside. And suddenly, the atmosphere felt different. Quieter. More personal. "You disappeared," she said. I shrugged. Needed air. Diana studied me carefully, too carefully. Her gray eyes seemed to see right through me. Then her expression softened. "You're upset." "No. You are." I sighed. Maybe I was. A little. Fine, a lot. Diana leaned against the railing, close enough that I could smell her perfume again. Floral. Warm. Familiar now. "Did Catherine say something to you?" she asked. No. Then what happened? I hesitated. Dangerous territory. Very dangerous. Then somehow, the words slipped out before I could stop them. "Are you two together?" The second I said it, I wanted to throw myself off the balcony. Not literally. Probably. Diana blinked. Then blinked again. And then she laughed. Actually laughed, hard enough that she had to steady herself against the railing. "You thought Catherine and I were dating?" My face was on fire. Literally. I could feel the heat radiating from my cheeks, my neck, probably the top of my head. Diana shook her head, still laughing. No. Absolutely not. She's like a sister to me. I've known her since undergrad. She's married to a woman named Laura. They have 2 golden retrievers. The only thing Catherine and I have in common is our taste in wine. Relief flooded through me so fast it was embarrassing. Diana noticed. Of course she noticed. The woman noticed everything. A slow smile spread across her face. Jealous? No. You definitely were. I wasn't jealous. I was curious. There's a difference. Elena. What? You're a terrible liar. I know. I groaned, covering my face. I'm sorry. That was completely inappropriate. You're my professor. I shouldn't have asked. I should. Elena. I looked up. Diana had stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her gray eyes. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her body. I've been trying to find the right time to tell you something, she said. My heart stopped. What? She hesitated, actually hesitated. The woman who could lecture on complex literary theory without blinking, who could shut down a seminar room with a single look, looked nervous. Because of me. The photo, she said. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A genuine accident. And I was going to let it go, pretend it never happened, because you were my student and it would have been inappropriate to bring it up. Okay. But then. She paused. Then we started working together. And I found myself looking forward to it. Looking forward to you. Your voice. Your laugh. The way you tilt your head when you're thinking. The way you argue with me about Jane Austen like I'm not the person grading your papers. My breath caught. Elena. Diana's voice was soft. Gentle. I like you. More than I should. More than is probably appropriate. And I know that's complicated. I know I'm your professor. I know there are rules and ethics and all kinds of reasons why this shouldn't happen. Okay. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. She took a step closer. Another. Close enough to touch. And then she said the words that changed everything. I don't want to be your professor, Elena. I want to be the woman you call when something good happens. The woman you stay up late talking to. The woman you think about when you can't sleep. I stared at her. She stared back. Diana, I started. I know it's a lot, she said quickly. I know it's complicated. I know you might not feel the same way, and that's fine. I just needed to say it. Because keeping it inside was starting to feel like I was lying to you. A million thoughts crashed through my head. Rules. Ethics. Power dynamics. What people would think. What the department would say. And underneath it all, one overwhelming truth. I liked her. I'd liked her for months. Maybe from the first time I'd walked into her seminar and heard her voice. Maybe from the moment she'd made a dry joke about postmodernism and I'd laughed so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. Maybe from before that, from the moment I'd read her book and realized that someone this brilliant, this insightful, this good existed in the world. I feel the same way, I said. Diana blinked. What? I've been staring at you for months. Making up excuses to come to your office. Writing terrible poetry about your hands and your voice and the way you smile. I have a folder on my phone literally titled Literary Analysis that's just pictures I've taken of you when you weren't looking. That's not weird. It's definitely not weird. But I feel the same way. Diana stared at me. Then she laughed. Not the small, contained laugh from before. A real laugh. A full, open, delighted sound that echoed across the balcony. You have a folder of pictures of me? That's what you're focusing on? It's very sweet. It's extremely creepy. I'm aware. Diana stepped closer, close enough that the space between us was nothing. Close enough that I could see the way her pulse was beating at her throat. Elena. Yeah? I'm going to kiss you now. If that's okay. I nodded. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely okay. She leaned in. And then she kissed me. It was soft at first. Gentle. A question, not a demand. Her lips tasted like wine and something sweeter, something that was just her. Her hand came up to cup my face, her fingers cool against my burning skin. I kissed her back like she was the answer to a question I'd been asking my whole life. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless. I started. Yeah. I mean, you're my professor. I know. And there are rules. I know. And people will talk. I don't care. I stared at her. She stared back, her gray eyes bright with something I couldn't quite name. Okay, I said. Okay. Diana smiled, a real smile, the kind that transformed her whole face. Good. 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 And then she kissed me again. We stood on the balcony, wrapped in each other, as the festival continued inside. Music drifted through the doors. Laughter and conversation and the clinking of glasses. But for that moment, nothing existed except us. The next morning, I woke up with a smile on my face. Not because I'd slept well, I'd slept terribly, actually, too excited to close my eyes for more than a few minutes at a time. But because I kept replaying the previous night. The balcony. The kiss. The look in Diana's eyes when she'd said she didn't care about the rules. I was halfway through making coffee when my phone buzzed. Diana, good morning. My heart did a little dance. Me, morning. Diana, sleep well? Me, define well. Diana, that bad? Me, I couldn't stop thinking about you. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Diana, I couldn't stop thinking about you either. I grinned so hard my face hurt. Me, so, what happens now? That was the question, wasn't it? The one I'd been avoiding since last night. Because being attracted to your professor was one thing. Actually acting on it was another entirely. Diana's response came after a long pause. Diana, I don't know. But I'd like to figure it out with you. Me, that sounds like a plan. Diana, would you want to have dinner tonight? Off campus. Away from the university. Just us. I nearly dropped my phone. Me, yes. Definitely yes. Diana, good. I'll pick you up at 7. Me, wait, you're going to pick me up? Diana, is that a problem? Me, no. I just, didn't expect you to have a car that wasn't faculty issue. Diana, I don't. I have a very normal person car. Me, lies. Diana, you'll see. I spent the entire day in a daze. My seminar felt like it was happening to someone else. My research reading made absolutely no sense. Even Riley, who was in the same seminar, kept giving me suspicious looks. You're weird today, she whispered during the lecture. I'm always weird. More weird than usual. I didn't tell her. Not yet. Because telling her meant making it real, and making it real meant acknowledging how complicated everything was. But when 7 p.m. finally arrived, and I opened my apartment door to find Diana Ashford standing in the hallway, wearing dark jeans and a soft sweater, looking like she'd just stepped out of a dream, all my doubts disappeared. "Hey," she said. "Hey. You look beautiful." And there it was. That smile. That devastating, heart-stopping smile. "Thanks," I managed. "You too." And then I kissed her. Right there in my apartment hallway. Without thinking. Without worrying about who might see or what anyone might think. She kissed me back like it was the most natural thing in the world. Diana took me to a small Italian place on the other side of town, far enough from campus that we probably wouldn't run into anyone we knew. The food was amazing. The wine was better. And the conversation was everything I'd been craving for months. We talked about everything. Childhoods, families, the things that made us who we were. She told me about growing up in a small town, being the first person in her family to go to college, the pressure she'd felt to succeed. She told me about the relationships she'd had, the ones that didn't work out, the ones that taught her what she wanted. And she told me about herself. The real herself. Not the professor. Not the academic. The woman. "I spent a lot of years pretending I didn't need anyone," she said, swirling her wine. "It was easier. Safer. If you don't let people in, they can't disappoint you." That sounds lonely. It was. She looked at me. "Until I met you." My heart skipped. "Diana. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I've never felt this way before. About anyone. And I don't want to pretend I don't." "Okay." She raised an eyebrow. "Okay?" "Yeah." I took her hand across the table. "I feel the same way." And I did. Despite everything, the rules, the ethics, the potential consequences, I felt it. That night, she drove me home. We sat in her very normal person car, a Subaru, which was honestly more endearing than any luxury car could have been, and she kissed me goodnight. "This isn't just one night, is it?" I asked. Diana shook her head. "No." "Good. Good." And I walked inside with a smile so wide my cheeks hurt. Weeks passed. Then months. We were careful. So careful. No public affection on campus. No obvious displays of our relationship. I stopped coming to her office outside of regular hours, and we communicated mostly through encrypted messages that couldn't be traced. But somehow, we made it work. She supported my research. Encouraged me when I doubted myself. Celebrated with me when my thesis proposal was accepted. And I showed her a different side of herself. The side that laughed freely. That relaxed. That let herself be vulnerable in ways she'd never allowed before. "Being with you," she told me one night, curled up on my couch, "is the most terrifying thing I've ever done." That's a good thing? The best thing. The end of the semester came faster than I expected. My final thesis defense was in 2 weeks. After that, I'd graduate. And then, finally, the power imbalance that had hovered over us from the beginning would be gone. We could be just two women in love. No rules. No ethical concerns. No careful hiding. "I can't wait," Diana said, kissing my forehead. "Me neither." "Have you thought about," she hesitated. "What? What comes after? For us?" I turned to look at her. Her gray eyes were soft, open, full of something that looked a lot like hope. Yeah, I said. I have. Tell me. And I did. Everything. The future I imagined, graduate school, research, a career. And in that future, always, her. Diana listened. Her smile grew wider with every word. That sounds perfect, she said. Yeah? Yeah. Good. And then she kissed me, and I knew finally, completely, absolutely, that this was right. The photo had been an accident. A stupid, embarrassing, soul-destroying accident. But sometimes, accidents led you exactly where you were supposed to be. I leaned into her, and everything else faded away. The weeks after the festival were a blur of stolen moments and careful secrets. We developed a rhythm, a language of glances across seminar rooms, of texts that said everything without saying anything, of late-night phone calls that stretched until the sun started creeping through my curtains. Diana would call me every night at 11, her voice low and warm through the speaker, and we'd talk about everything and nothing until I was practically asleep against my pillow. I should let you go, she'd say. 5 more minutes. You said that 20 minutes ago. I meant it then too. She'd laugh, that soft, private laugh that I'd come to treasure like a secret currency. You're impossible. You like it. I hate it. You're lying. I absolutely am. And then we'd stay on the phone for another hour, because neither of us could bring ourselves to hang up. The hardest part was being around her in public. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I sat in her seminar, taking notes like a good graduate student, pretending my heart wasn't doing gymnastics every time she looked in my direction. Pretending I didn't notice the way her voice dropped an octave when she was explaining something particularly complex. Pretending I wasn't cataloging every detail, the way her hair caught the light, the way she tucked a strand behind her ear when she was thinking, the way her lips curved when she made a particularly sharp observation. And she pretended too. With everyone else, she was the same ice queen she'd always been. Professional. Distant. Unreadable. But sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, she'd catch my eye. And in that split second, the mask would slip. Just a flicker. A softening. A tiny smile that was only for me. It was enough to make my entire week. 2 weeks after the festival, Riley cornered me in my apartment. Something is different about you, she announced, blocking the doorway like a bouncer. And before you say nothing, I've known you for 7 years, Elena. I can smell secrets. I don't have secrets. You're a terrible liar. This has been established. I sighed, collapsing onto my couch. Riley, I love you, but sometimes I hate you. That's fair. Now spill. I stared at the ceiling. I wanted to tell her. I'd wanted to tell her since the night on the balcony. But somehow, saying it out loud made it real in a way that terrified me. Riley, I said slowly, promise you won't tell anyone. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God. You're pregnant. What? No. Riley, I'm not pregnant. Where did you even? Then what? You're dropping out? You're moving to another country? You're secretly a spy? I'm dating someone. Riley blinked. Okay. That's okay. That's not a big deal. Why are you being weird about it? Because it's complicated. How complicated? I took a deep breath. It's Diana. Silence. Riley stared at me. I stared at her. Then she screamed. Not the way she'd screamed in the lounge, that had been loud, but this was something else entirely. This was a sound of pure, undiluted chaos. Riley, keep your voice down. You're dating Professor Ashford? I'm not, we're seeing each other. It's complicated. How complicated? Like she's your professor, complicated? Because we already knew that. That's not news. Like if anyone finds out, she could lose her job and I could get expelled, complicated. Riley's face went through about 12 expressions in 3 seconds. Shock. Delight. Concern. Awe. More delight. Oh my God, she whispered. You're actually dating the Ice Queen. She's not an Ice Queen. Elena. The woman has never smiled in public. She once made a visiting professor cry. She literally published a book about how emotions are overrated in literary analysis. And you're dating her. That book was about formalism, not emotions. And she's actually really warm and funny, Anne. I don't want to hear about how warm and funny she is. I want to know everything. Every single detail. From the beginning. So I told her. Everything. The photo. The office meeting. The festival. The balcony. The Italian restaurant. The late-night phone calls. By the end, Riley was crying. This is like a movie, she sniffled. A really inappropriate, ethically questionable movie that I would absolutely watch. It's not inappropriate. Well, okay, it's a little inappropriate. But we're being careful. Clearly. You're literally dating your professor. I know it's a lot. But I've never felt this way about anyone, Riley. She's not what anyone thinks. She's kind and funny and she reads poetry to me over the phone and she makes me feel like I'm the most interesting person in the world. Riley wiped her eyes. Okay. Fine. I approve. But you have to promise me something. What? If anyone ever asks, I'm going to pretend I know absolutely nothing about this. I'm Switzerland. I'm neutral. Fair enough. And you have to keep me updated. Weekly updates. I need to know everything. Riley. This is the most exciting thing that's ever happened in your life, and I'm going to live vicariously through you. I laughed. Fine. Weekly updates. The next few weeks were a careful dance. Diana and I fell into a pattern. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we pretended to be professor and student. Wednesdays and Fridays, I'd go to her apartment, a beautiful, surprisingly cozy place on the other side of town, and we'd cook dinner together and talk for hours and fall asleep tangled in each other. I learned things about her that no one else knew. I learned that she'd been married once years ago, to a man who'd made her feel small. She'd left him after 3 years, and she'd never looked back. He made me feel like I was too much, she told me one night, curled against my side. Too loud. Too smart. Too opinionated. I spent 3 years trying to shrink myself, and I promised myself I'd never do that again. That's why you built walls, I said softly. She nodded. It was easier. If I didn't let anyone in, no one could ask me to be smaller than I am. But you let me in. Against my better judgment, she said, and there was a smile in her voice. You're very persistent. I'm a grad student. Persistence is basically a job requirement. She laughed, and I felt it through her whole body, the vibration of it against my skin. I'm glad you were persistent, she said. I'm glad you sent that photo. I'm still embarrassed about that. Don't be. It was the best accident of my life. I learned that she was terrified of failure. Not in the obvious way, Not the way students were terrified of bad grades or professors were terrified of bad reviews. She was terrified of not being good enough. Of being exposed as a fraud. Of waking up one day to find that everything she'd worked for had been taken away. Imposter syndrome, she said, like she was diagnosing a patient. I know what it is. I've read the research. I know it's irrational. But I can't make it go away. You're a published author, I said. You've won awards. You're literally the most respected professor in the department. I know. But sometimes I wake up and think, what if they realize I'm just faking it? What if they find out I don't actually know what I'm doing? I held her tighter. You're not faking it. You're brilliant. You're one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. You have to say that. You're dating me. I don't have to say anything. I'm saying it because it's true. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, I don't deserve you. I turned her face toward mine. Yes, you do. You deserve everything. And I'm going to keep telling you that until you believe it. She kissed me then, soft and sweet. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. And in that moment, I understood something I'd never understood before. The Ice Queen wasn't cold. She was scared. She'd spent years building walls so high that no one could climb them, because letting people in meant risking getting hurt. But I'd climbed them anyway. And now I was the only one who got to see what was inside. Midterms came and went. Papers were graded. Life continued. My thesis was due in 3 weeks. The final draft. The one that would determine whether I graduated on time, whether I got my degree, whether all the years of work had been worth it. I was stressed. More stressed than I'd ever been. My caffeine intake was approaching dangerous levels. I'd stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. My apartment looked like a tornado had hit it. And Diana noticed. She noticed everything. You're not sleeping, she said one night. We were on the phone, and my voice had been dragging. I could hear the concern in hers. I'm fine. You're not fine. You sound exhausted. I'll sleep when the thesis is done. Elena. I'm serious. I can't afford to slow down. I'm so close. I know. Her voice was gentle. But you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of yourself. I'll take care of myself after graduation. There was a long pause. Then she said, I'm coming over. Diana, it's midnight. Exactly. You should be sleeping. I'm going to make you sleep. Are you going to sedate me? I'm going to make you drink tea and then I'm going to read to you until you fall asleep. That's actually really romantic. Shut up. I'll be there in 20 minutes. True to her word, she arrived at my apartment 20 minutes later, carrying a bag of groceries. She made me chamomile tea. She made me put on my pajamas. She made me get into bed. Then she sat beside me, opened a book, and started reading. It was poetry. Walt Whitman. Her voice was low and steady, the words washing over me like music. I was asleep within 15 minutes. I woke up the next morning to find her still there. She was propped against the headboard, her book closed on her lap, her eyes watching me with an expression so soft it made my chest ache. Hey, I said, my voice scratchy. Hey. How long have you been awake? Long enough to watch you sleep. It's very cute. I'm not cute when I sleep. I drool. I know. I saw. It was adorable. I groaned, covering my face. This is humiliating. This is love, she said. Love is watching someone drool on their pillow and thinking they're the most beautiful person in the world. My heart stopped. She didn't even seem to realize what she'd said. She was just looking at me. Like I was the answer to some question she'd been asking for years. Diana, I whispered. What? Did you just say? Oh. Her eyes widened. Oh. Did you mean that? She stared at me. The silence stretched between us, heavy with something I'd been too scared to name. Yes, she finally said. I meant it. You love me? I love you. I didn't know what to say. I'd imagined this moment 100 times, imagined her saying those words, imagined my response, but now that it was happening, my brain had completely short-circuited. Elena? She looked suddenly uncertain. You don't have to. I love you too, I said. Her face transformed. The tension evaporated. The uncertainty disappeared. And in its place was something radiant, a smile so bright it practically lit up the room. Yeah, she said. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then she kissed me, and I tasted the promise of everything to come. The next few weeks were a blur of thesis edits and stolen kisses. I was working harder than I'd ever worked in my life. My entire existence revolved around my thesis, every waking moment, every spare second, every ounce of energy I had. But somehow, Diana made it bearable. She brought me coffee when I was too tired to get up. She reviewed my chapters and gave me feedback so sharp it made me dizzy. She stayed up late with me, reading beside me in companionable silence, her presence a steady anchor in the chaos. You don't have to do this, I told her one night. You have your own work. My work can wait. You matter more. You're too good to me. Impossible. I'm not good enough. We bickered about it, playfully, lovingly, the way we bickered about everything. It became our thing. Arguing about who cared more, who was more supportive, who was more lucky to have the other. The truth was, we were both lucky. We'd both found something rare and precious and beautiful, and neither of us wanted to mess it up. The night before my thesis defense, I was a wreck. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Couldn't think about anything except the committee that would be judging me tomorrow, the questions they'd ask, the answers I might not have, the possibility that all my work could fall apart in a single hour. Diana came over. She made me eat something. She made me take a shower. She held me in her arms and talked me down from the ledge. What if I fail? I whispered. You won't. But what if I do? Then you'll try again. And again. And again. Because you're the most stubborn person I've ever met, and you don't know how to quit. That's not helpful. It's the truth. She kissed my forehead. Elena, you're brilliant. You've worked harder than anyone I know. You've done the research. You've written the thesis. Tomorrow, you're going to walk in there and prove to everyone what I already know. What's that? That you're extraordinary. I cried a little bit. I was too tired and stressed and emotional to help it. She held me through it, rubbing circles on my back, whispering soft reassurances. When I finally calmed down, she said, "What do you need right now?" "I need you to stay. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "I promise." The defense was terrifying. I stood in front of the committee, 5 professors, all of them intimidating in their own ways, and I talked about my research. My voice shook at first. My hands were trembling. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. And then I looked up, and Diana was there. She was in the back of the room, sitting in the corner, her expression carefully neutral. But when our eyes met, she gave me the tiniest nod. A reassurance. A reminder. You've got this. I took a deep breath. And I kept going. The questions came fast and sharp. I answered them. Some were hard. Some were surprisingly easy. By the end of the hour, I was exhausted but exhilarated. The committee asked me to wait outside while they deliberated. I stepped into the hallway and immediately collapsed against the wall. I started. Brilliant. Diana appeared beside me, her voice low. You were brilliant. I was a disaster. You were brilliant. I'm being objective. I'm a scholar. I know brilliance when I see it. I laughed, the tension finally breaking. You're biased. Completely. But I'm also right. She reached for my hand, squeezed it once, then let go, the most we could do in public. But that one touch was enough. It grounded me. Reminded me I wasn't alone. 10 minutes later, the committee came out. They'd accepted my thesis. I'd passed. I cried. I won't pretend I didn't. I cried right there in the hallway, tears streaming down my face, while the committee congratulated me and told me how impressed they were. I hugged my advisor. I shook hands with the rest of them. And then Diana stepped forward. She was smiling, a real smile, the kind she only showed me. Congratulations, she said. Thank you. I was trying not to sob. I couldn't have done it without you. I know. Her smile widened. But you would have figured it out eventually. You're resourceful. And then she did something I didn't expect. She hugged me. In front of everyone. In full view of the entire English department. It was a professional hug, quick, appropriate, the kind of hug a mentor might give a successful student. But I felt the squeeze of her fingers against my back. I felt the warmth of her body against mine. I heard the quiet whisper in my ear that only I could hear. Proud of you. My heart exploded. Thank you, I whispered back. And then we let go, and everything was normal again. But it wasn't normal. Nothing would ever be normal again. Graduation was a week later. It was a beautiful ceremony, sunny and warm, with the whole campus dressed up in their finest. Families and friends filled the auditorium, cheering and clapping as we walked across the stage. Riley was there, screaming my name like I was winning a Grammy. My parents were there, crying in the way parents did. Even Catherine was there, sitting in the faculty section, applauding politely. And Diana was there. She was sitting in the front row, her face a careful mask of professionalism. But when I walked across the stage and shook the dean's hand, I saw her smile. Just a flash. Just a second. But it was there. I'd done it. I'd graduated. The party afterward was at Riley's apartment, small, messy, full of cheap wine and terrible music and people I loved. My parents had already left, exhausted by the excitement. Catherine was in the corner, pretending to be too cool for everyone. Riley was the life of the party, as usual. And Diana was there. She'd come for an hour. Just an hour, she'd said. She didn't want to draw attention. But for that hour, I couldn't stop looking at her. She was talking to Catherine, laughing at something, looking impossibly gorgeous in a simple black dress. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders. Her gray eyes were warm and soft. And every time she caught my eye, she smiled. Later that night, we ended up on Riley's balcony. The party had died down. Most people had left. It was just us and Catherine and a few stragglers. "Congratulations again," Diana said, leaning against the railing beside me. "Thank you again. Come see me tomorrow," she said quietly. "My place. No more hiding." I looked at her. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything. Even though I'm technically not your student anymore, it's still going to be complicated." "I know. I'm willing to deal with complicated." "Are you?" I took her hand. "Yeah. I am." "Good." And that night, in the back of her Subaru, she kissed me goodbye. A real goodbye. The kind that promised more. "See you tomorrow," she whispered. "See you tomorrow." The next day, I went to her apartment. It felt different this time. Not illicit. Not secret. Just real. She met me at the door, her hair messy, her smile open. She was wearing sweats and a t-shirt, the kind of casual I'd never seen her in before. "Hey," she said. "Hey. Come in." We spent the whole day together. No hiding. No careful distance. Just us, being us, in the way we'd always wanted. "I can't believe this is real," I said, curled up on her couch. "It's real. We're actually together." "Yes." No more lying. No more lying. I looked at her. "What happens now?" She smiled. "Whatever we want." And that was the beginning. Not the end, the beginning. Because love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about getting everything right. It was about showing up, even when it was complicated. It was about choosing each other, again and again. And we chose each other. Every single day. 6 months later, I moved in with her. 1 year later, I got a job teaching at a different university, far enough away that no one would question our relationship, close enough that we could still see each other every weekend. 2 years later, we got engaged. And 3 years after that, we got married. It wasn't easy. We had our challenges, the distance, the judgment of others, the complicated history of how we'd started. But we got through it. Because love was worth it. On the morning of our wedding, Riley was my maid of honor. "I can't believe this," she said, pinning flowers to my hair. "You're actually marrying the Ice Queen." "She's not an Ice Queen. She's married to you." That officially makes her not an Ice Queen. I'm still going to call her that though. "Riley." "What?" "She deserves it. She literally made you suffer for 8 months before she made a move." I suffered because I was too scared to say anything. Same thing. I laughed, but my heart was pounding. I was about to marry Diana Ashford. The woman who'd once terrified me. The woman who'd changed my entire life. The woman who saw the best in me, even when I couldn't see it myself. "You ready?" Riley asked. "Yeah," I said. I've never been more ready. The ceremony was small. Just family and close friends, gathered in a garden on a perfect summer afternoon. Diana looked stunning in her white suit, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her gray eyes shining with tears. We exchanged vows. I cried. She cried. Riley cried. Even Catherine cried, though she'd deny it later. "I didn't plan any of this," I said, looking at Diana. "I didn't plan to fall for my professor. I didn't plan to send you that photo. I didn't plan for any of it." "Same," she said. "But I'm so glad it happened." "Me too." And then we kissed, not the careful, stolen kisses of before, but a real one. A public one. The kind of kiss that said we're here, we're together, and we're not hiding anymore. The crowd cheered. And we laughed. Because after everything, the embarrassment, the secrets, the complications, we'd made it. Sometimes I think about that night. The night I stared at my phone in disbelief. The night I screamed so loud my neighbor banged on the wall. The night I was sure my life was over. I thought I'd ruined everything. But I didn't. I accidentally sent a photo to the wrong person, and it changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. Because sometimes, the worst mistakes lead to the best things. I'm Elena now. Elena Ashford. I have a wife who loves me, a career I'm proud of, and a best friend who still won't let me forget how this whole thing started. Remember the photo? Riley says every time we have wine. I remember. That was the most chaotic day of your life. It was also the best. Riley rolls her eyes. You're such a romantic. I'm married. I'm allowed. And Diana, my Diana, just smiles. She's not an ice queen anymore. She never really was. She's just the woman I love. The woman who changed everything. The woman who made an accidental disaster into the best thing that ever happened to me.